And this evening we have Peter Aranstem coming to tell us about the Elizabeth Tilley. I could tell you a lot about Peter. If I started, I'd take his whole time, so I will just tell you a few things about Peter. One of the things, as most of you know, I was curator at the Tibet's Howland House with the Howland family, and Peter's very important to the Howland family because we had a shallop built. In 2003 it was finished, and Peter is the one that built the shallop. He's the one that taught them how to sail the shallop. And he's the one that always ran the chase boat. Because when they ran the shallop before with the Pilgrims, when they got behind, they had wars to do. We didn't. We had Peter in the chase boat. So we didn't have to row. So he's very important to us. But he has many other things that he's done at the plantation, and he's now going to be the executive director of the Pilgrim John Howland Society, and working through that. But on the boats, and he went from building boats, and then as he got older, he went back to school and got his master's in writing children's books. And he has several children's books out there that involve the Pilgrims and the Mayflower. So he's important in many, many ways. So he's going to tell us about the Elizabeth Tilley tonight.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come here and speak about something that I love very much, wooden boat building and sailing and Pilgrim history. So it all ties together nicely. I learned boat building. I went to college, Bates College, Lewiston, Maine, yay. Graduated with a degree in philosophy. And I told my then mother-in-law, don't worry, I'm going to learn wooden boat building, so I'll have a stable career. She didn't think it was funny, but it seemed to work out. Anyway, so I became an apprentice wooden boat builder in Maine, lived and worked in Maine for a long time, got a chance to work at Plymouth Plantation, was hired to build the ship's boat, which is a 22-foot version of that shallop, that's 33 feet. For Plymouth Plantation, and then stayed on since then. Fast forward a long time to 2002, I think it was, when Brad Gorham, who was then the president, longtime president of the Howland Society, appeared. I happened to be working in rigging on Mayflower 2 that day. Brad drove up, you could drive up at that time, to the ship, and somebody came and got me and said, this man's looking for you, or he came and said, I'm on my way to Maine to look for somebody to build me a shallop. And I said, well, you don't need to go to Maine, we'll build it right here for you. And we had various conversations over a period of time and came to an understanding and agreement that we would build a shallop for them and help them sail it for the Howland Society, and then help them sail it to Maine. And that's basically what we did. And the reason, you might be asking, why did the Howlands have a shallop or want a shallop? It's because of John Howland's work with the trading post, which was in Augusta, Maine, where Augusta is now, on the Kennebec River. The Plymouth colony was growing corn at a great rate. They couldn't use all the corn that they were growing. They needed to raise funds to pay off debts for their colony. So they were trying to trade the corn. They know that they could sell the corn in Maine or trade the corn in Maine for beaver pelts and other things that they needed. And so they established a trading post. John Howland was one of the people who started that process, was integral in that process. So the first question that we have to ask ourselves if we're going to build a shallop is, what's a shallop? Not everybody knows what it is, but in the 17th century, I bet if you were in a coastal community and asked what a shallop was, they would know. A shallop was a very common watercraft, working watercraft. I always refer to it as the pickup truck of the 17th century. I have a pickup truck. A lot of people probably have pickup trucks. They're used for a lot of different things. They're very versatile, and that's what a shallop is. A shallop is for transportation, it's for cargo carrying, it's for passenger carrying, it's for taking big bulky items from one place to the other, particularly in the New World where there aren't any roads yet. A shallop is vital to the life of the colony, and we know this, my goodness, this image is, I think it's Leiden in the 17th century, I'm pretty sure it is. But you can see all the shallops that are in this engraving, just showing how common it was. It's definitely a Dutch origin, the design, but it was common throughout Europe. Many countries throughout Europe, coastal Europe anyway, had shallops, calling them different things. But the overall characteristics were usually a double-ended boat. That is, it was didn't have a flat transom, it pointed at both ends. Open, generally, that is no deck. Very strongly constructed so that it could survive for a long period of time. And it was usually a single mast, I'm not going to say usually, but often a single mast vessel that could also be rowed. So it was a common boat type. Let's go to the next slide, shall we? In the Mayflower, of course, had a shallop, as you all know your Pilgrim history, that came with the Mayflower in 1620. But the Mayflower, some people are often asked, did they tow it behind it? But if you imagine sailing across the Atlantic September through November, very rough crossing, the shallop wouldn't survive that kind of being towed across the ocean. And in that period, most exploring vessels had shallops with them in various degrees of disassembly. Gosnold had a shallop that was in 2 pieces, so you could use either half of that shallop. Remember, it's pointed at both ends. They had a bulk, literally cut in half length, a thwart ship with planks on either end, so you could use half or bolt it all together to make the big shallop. Gosnold 1602, I'm trying to think of other shallop, other ships brought them entirely disassembled, all the frames, all the planking in bundles and reassembled in the New World and used for exploration. Big ship, it's hard to maneuver, in close near shore. A lot of times you're going to want to sail up a river or explore small coastal areas. Shallop is ideal. The Pilgrim shallop, according to William Bradford, was stowed in quarters betwixt the decks. And Plymouth Plantation being the kind of place it is, there's a lot of controversy over it. Does stowed in quarters mean it was stowed in the place where the Pilgrims were living, down below? Or does it mean stowed in 4 pieces, literally? Who knows? You tell me. But we do know they had a shallop with them. And we also know that the shallop was in pieces large enough for passengers to be sleeping in them, because the ship's carpenter, who put the shallop back together, took over 2 weeks, and Bradford noted the carpenter was complaining, let's say, that the shallop pieces had worked loose because of the people living in sleeping in those sections. Also, to point to how important a shallop is to the colony, watercraft in general, in Mort's relation, which talks about the very little about the crossing, but the very first year of the colony, as soon as they arrive in Provincetown and float those shallop parts ashore with the ship's boat, they start working on another shallop. They have people making parts for another shallop because they know they need watercraft if they're going to live in that coastal community. So that's a shallop. Let's move forward. We can go to the next slide. Thank you, Tom. In 1624, a shipwright, a ship's carpenter, I think Bradford calls him, comes to the colony, or is brought to the colony to build more shallops. He builds 2 shallops. He hews out timbers for a ketch, which is a little bit bigger shallop. These are around 30 feet. A ketch might be 45 feet with a deck. He hews out timbers for that ketch, builds 2 shallops, and a lighter, which is basically a barge, so they can float stuff in shallow water, heavy stuff, from place to place. And then, after all that labor, the ship's carpenter dies. So it's sort of a cautionary tale, I guess. But after he dies, they still have these two shallops. And one of the house carpenters had worked with the shipwright to build these boats. And in 1625, they were traveling to their new post up on the Kennebec and realized these open shallops are not the best thing for carrying cargo of corn. The corn gets wet, passing people get wet. So they decided they need a slightly bigger, something like the ketch that unfortunately was never completed. But the house carpenter, Bradford refers to as a clever house carpenter, decided he could take one of those shallops, cut it in half, lengthen it about 5 or 6 feet, and then put a deck on it and have a nice, stout, coastal trading vessel. So that's what they did. And that is the boat that we attempted to recreate for the Pilgrim John Howland Society. This is actually the ship's boat drawings, but the shallop, in the 17th century, if you saw a shallop, one shallop, you'd seen them all, basically. The shape, the design is very similar one to the other. Even the ships, the style of naval architecture of the time resulted in vessels very similar one to the other. And there was a system of using arcs of circles to create the shapes, all the shapes, like this stem, the curve of the front of the stem is an arc of a circle. These sweeps, rising lines and narrowing lines, tell you how high up or down from this baseline these curved shapes are. Though that's a big, giant arc of a circle. And so everything is based on arcs of circles and tangents. So we started with the idea that they probably had around a 33-foot shallop, which is what the shallop next to Mayflower, how long that is, added 5 feet, 33 and 5 is 38, yes, added 5 feet, and raised it up about a foot and added a deck, and that's the shallop that we built. Let's go to, I think there's one more about this part of it. Yeah, in the 17th century, as I mentioned, arcs of circle, here you can see it's great. I can't remember where that image comes from, but it's a 17th century image of how the curve of the stem is drawn as an arc of a circle. All these lines are helping you figure out where the pivot point is for that arc of a circle. I just threw this in because it's kind of neat. I think it's a later term, but that style of ship, the underbody, they refer to as the cod head and mackerel tail. Cod, big fat fish. The 17th century ships are like that. If you look at the Mayflower, look at the Shallop, they're very broad or bluff in the bow, but they come back very fine in the stern, so there's a big cod head, fine mackerel tail at the back end of the ship. This image is brand new, and I realize you can't probably see. You could, if you use your imagination. I'm currently doing house restoration work. We're working in the Winslow house up in Marshfield, 1699 house. One day at lunch, we were looking at in the mantelpiece. My coworker shined a light sideways. You can see inscribed in here, and you can't really see it, the shape of a boat. Very much, this is a copy of Sloops and Shallops, William, not William Bradford, Baker, William Baker's Sloops and Shallops. This is a 1707, I think it is, shallop, very similar in shape, if you can point it out. This is the stern, the bow is here somewhere, and those sails are right there. Very cool. And it just, you could even see the pivot point where they used to scribe in with a compass, that stem. We found out, my coworker Rick McKee was in contact with an English archaeologist. He said there's churches in England, those boat shapes are scribed in all over the place. They don't really know why. Whether it was some sort of like a votive candle, looking for a blessing for the people traveling on ships, we're not sure. If you happen to have an old house, look around, you might find one. Anyway, Shallop design. Thank you, Tom. So, after the theoretical and the drawing on paper, we had to set to work hewing and axing timbers. And a boat like that takes up a lot of timber. We reached out everywhere we could. That's white oak. Somebody up in Norwell, Dave, I forget his last name, gave us that white oak tree. It's a little more curved than it actually looks. This is going to become the stem, but the process of hewing starts by roughing out the log, chopping away the rough outer bark and sapwood, etc. And then you go to smoothing it with a broad axe. The chopping or felling axe digs in, it's beveled on both sides, and you split away wood. These broad axes for smoothing, making this nice smooth surface, is flat on the back side and beveled on the other side, so it slices, and you kind of do it in a slicing motion. So it slices off flatly chunks of wood. This is going to become the stemding. Okay, Tom. And so, as I mentioned, there was a lot. This is the summer, I'm going to say, of 2002, or maybe 2001. I should have checked. Anyway, lots of hewing, we had a lot of short, curvy timbers that we had to make flat and boat shapes out of. Next, please. So, as I mentioned, there's the broad axe and the hewing, which is using the felling axe and the broad axe to do squaring up timbers. But the adze is the classic shipwright's tool. The head is 90 degrees to the handle, as opposed to in line with it like an axe. So that you swing it in short arcs, actually. So you hold the end of the handle still, and you swing and pivot, and you can make really smooth beveled cuts. Here's Len Travers, who's professor of history at South Dartmouth, UMass South Dartmouth. These are frame pieces, the curved sections that make up the shape of the boat, and each frame is not a square section, it's got curve as the boat shape changes, so Len is putting the curve into that piece. Here I am putting a gouge in my shin, it looks like. But then there's the pit sawing. The hull is made of oak, essentially, oak frames, oak planking. We'll see more of that in a minute. But the deck is made of pine, and the reason for that is pine is lighter. It swells tighter than oak does, and it's a little more flexible, I guess. And so the process of pit sawing is you hew a log flat. These were close to 20-foot long white pine trees someone donated to us. So you have to hew the logs flat on both sides, snap your lines all the way around. Then you have the tiller man and the pit man, or pit woman. And this is what you do all day long, up and down, up and down. This pit saw is probably 6 feet tall, and we're sawing out planking for the decking. In the 17th century, each one of these jobs is a trade in the shipyard. There's the guys whose life was spent in the pit, sawing boards of all kinds, not just decking, but there were guys who were hewers, the riggers, blacksmiths. Everybody had a more or less specialized work that's what they did. And this is fall and summer. Long before we needed the decking, we wanted to saw it out to dry. Here you can see setting it up to dry on those racks. Now it's winter, and the wood is still drying. It's important to have relatively dry decking. If you start with green decking, shrinks, the boat leaks.
How long did it take to cut one plank, one 20-foot plank?
We, I think it took about 3 or 4 days. What you do is you don't just saw one plank off after the other, because you'll end up with 2 planks, and you can't stand up on that narrow little board. So you saw all your lines to the, could you go back one, Tom? Thanks. The other.
I just have fat fingers, it's one more back.
Oh, that was fine. See, it's supported here, so you saw, which way are they going? There's another support here, so you saw to that support all the lines, saw to these supports all the lines, move the log, and then saw them all out, and they all pop off together, so that you don't end up with that tiny log. But anyway, it took us, I'm gonna say 3 or 4 days each log to saw that. And that was all day. Luckily, it's not just, people rotated on and off and all that. I don't want to sound too heroic. Thanks, Tom. So the first step in almost any traditional boat building is the backbone. So you've got the keel, and you've got the stern post, and you've got the stem, and that makes up the backbone, just like your backbone. And this is shaping, it's not right. Here we are, that's shaping the stern post, that's the back of the boat. As we said, it comes to a point, not a literal point, but it goes finer. So this is the inside of the back of the stem, that's the outside. And it's held to the keel with a giant dovetail. So Dave there is fitting the housing for that dovetail. And the bottom, I think we'll see it in the next slide. Yeah, there it is. The bottom of the dovetail has that, this transom has that tail. You can see the back, the bevel there in the back. It was kind of fun fitting, and I'm not sure if we put a fastening in it or not. What are we doing?
I didn't know if you were going forward to see a fastening. So.
Nope. Let's go back one more.
Back?
Okay, let's go forward.
All right.
I guess we can keep going forward to the next one. So that was the transom. This is the stem. This is that big curved piece, the first picture we showed, roughing out. Nice and smooth now. It's going to stand upright like this. This is that knee that Paula was hewing before. And the keel, is going to go like that. It's laying down. We're fitting the joint for the stem knee. This was bolted. That's what I'm remembering now. The stern post was just held together with that dovetail. The stem was bolted. They had iron fastenings in the 17th century. They had a variety of bolts. You could peen over both ends like a giant rivet. They did have threaded bolts for specific things. We always had in the back of my mind that we were going to sail on this to Maine. So we wanted to make it safe and secure. And so if there was a 17th century application that didn't seem as safe as it should be, we felt free to modify it. So we can move forward, I think. There's the backbone altogether. Here's the stem, nicely finished. And that's the stern post back there. And here we are standing it up. Just like in the 17th century, they built boats outdoors on stalks. These are like maybe 6-foot posts, 4 feet of it, or maybe 5 foot. So 3 feet of it are in the ground, 2 feet stick up, all leveled, nice. The top of it's level, so you have a good building foundation. Okay, thank you. And there it is upright. And this is when we realized, this is a big boat. When you see it to scale on paper, you think, it's not that bad. Then we see this thing standing upright, we got a lot of work to do. But this is the beginning of it. Then to fill in between the stem and the stern, of course, all the frames. I always use the reference, think of a loaf of bread, sliced loaf of bread. If you pick up a section of bread, look at that shape, that's what the loaf looks like at that section. That's what a frame does for you. each in a I forgot where I was even going. The boat is a very complex shape. It's curved this way, it's curving this way. So each one of those sections has a lot going on in each one. So we started this project. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You said it's built outside. Was this lofted? How do you loft something?
Well, actually, I'm just getting to that. Were you here at the very beginning?
No, that's why.
Okay, no, that's fine. Boats in the 17th century, many, all, were designed with the principles of swinging arcs of circles and lines tangent to those circles, complex series of arcs. Simple boat like this one, each cross section is basically a big curve and then a straight line to the keel. We read a lot about it, tried and attempted, made all these frame parts using that system. And then there is a series of lines called rising and narrowing lines, and those are long lines that you draw out to tell you how high each frame is from the keel and how wide each frame is from an imaginary center line. And so you just go along and you make those pieces based on that system.
And that's a system that's on paper.
It can be on paper, but the shipwrights then and boat builders then had a giant compass. And they knew each one, the shape, yeah. But wait. So we're going to talk about how putting these frames. This is like a platform, like a loft floor,
Okay.
and we're putting these curved pieces together. We know how wide each frame needs to be at any given point, and we know how high each one is. You can see this is a pretty flat one right in the middle. And then there's this overlapping futtock, they're called. That's a frame section. Actually, each one of this is a futtock, and that's a futtock, and that's a ground timber. And this is the simplest way to put together a boat. Anyone been to Pilgrim Hall? Do you remember the Sparrowhawk? It's actually been on the Cape for a while. Anyway, look at the bones of that. That's put together exactly like this. And then those frame pieces or futtocks, okay, Tom, thanks, are held together with wooden dowels. You might have heard the term trunnel. That's just basically a giant round dowel. This is locust, very hard, long-lasting, doesn't rot, very quickly, ideal for trunnel making. And we had, prior to this project, in an outdoor shed, stored a bunch of pieces of locust like this so that when it came time to have a project like this, we would be ready. This is a long-time volunteer with us, Gene, trainer. Now this, you'll notice, is not a handmade trunnel. We had also a secret weapon. Gene, there's no way he could make enough trunnels for us. A wonderful person, very skilled carver too. We made, it basically looked like a giant mechanical pencil sharpener, big, that you put a square piece of locust in on a little electric motor, and out came that. It was wonderful, deadly. Anyway, so these pieces, and the whole trick to trunnels is it's a friction fit generally, so the hole and the trunnel have to be exactly sized right. If the hole's too big, the trunnel doesn't hold, and the pieces fall apart. Hole's too tight, you start to drive it, and the trunnel breaks. I think we used linseed oil, dipped these in linseed oil as a sort of a lubricant because they were fairly snug fit. Then, Tom, thank you. The next step is cut them off flush, and with this custom-made chisel, split just the end of the trunnel and drive wedges in it so they mushroom out at both ends, and that's what holds those frame sections together. There's one. You can see its fall. And we're starting to see the boat come together there. We could see a lot of pieces on the ground still. Okay, this is where we've fully answered your question. This is where, if we were 17th century boatwrights, we wouldn't be afraid to move forward from there. I was leery of that we were going to get the boat that we needed to build, doing it the way we started in the 17th century. We just didn't have the expertise of generations of builders as they were, father to son or apprentice to master. I am a trained boat builder, however, in traditional wooden boat building. So what we did, it was getting late in the year, this is wintertime in here, we actually lofted out the lines, full size, that's what this body plan is called, and drew each one of these as a frame shape, so that we knew after we did all that. Let's go to the next one, Tom. And we made patterns for every single one of the frames. Here they all come down to the keel, and that's I guess towards the stern probably, frame shape. So we had, then in the end we had, I don't remember how many now, a fistful of frame patterns that we could take out to the yard and match to pieces that were curved in various shapes and build our, and this also assured that this side of the boat is going to match that side of the boat. Kind of handy. And here you can see all the frames are now stood up, but we did maintain the trunnel fastenings, and everything else about it is the same. And here we are, I guess that's me, using an adze to ferret. That is, make sure that if you put a batten along there, the batten touches all the way across the frame face. And the frames aren't doing this from one frame to the next, so when you look down the length of it, you don't see, you know, like a potato, you see a nice boat shape. There's prep shaping frames with a shortening of those. Then, as I mentioned, very common in England anyway, boats like this are planked with oak. Very strong, holds fastenings well, and for the way you could see, there's a defect in the slide somehow for that. The plank goes from almost horizontal to almost vertical in a relatively short space of span. In the 17th century, they would use literally fire, heat on one side and water on the other. So the fire is going to contract the wood, and the water is going to keep it from burning, but also it swells that size, so the wood will take a twist the way you need it to. We used a later version of that, of steaming. You might have heard that, the steaming wood, as a more modern, that is 19th century, 18th century convenience. So you have a giant wooden box with a fire source and a kettle, or a big barrel. In our case, it was an empty keg that we acquired empty. And you boil water, steam goes in the box, plank goes in. There's a general rule for steaming planks, or steaming any wood. It's an hour per inch of thickness. So these planks, I think, were 7/8 of an inch thick, so it was just about an hour's length of time. And they come out remarkably pliable. So they don't remain that way long, so you have to kind of hustle. But I guess you don't see any there. You have usually 4 or 5 people, 6, 7, 8 people on hand, depending on how big the plank is. Bring it out, twist it up into shape. And then we used boat spikes. They're square, I think these were galvanized spikes. So the nails, the planks are spiked to the, and the bungs. A lot of people thought we were cheating when they would see us covering these nail heads with bungs, trying to maybe pretend that they're trunnels. But that's not the case at all. The bung is, number one, protecting the head of the nail from water and keeping any water from seeping into the boat. It's not an attempt to make it look like a trunnel.
What did the original builders use them before they had iron clamps?
Well, good question. down here, they could use sticks to the ground,
Yeah.
you know, make sure they're the right size. They did have iron clamps for a long time. Yeah, if you look at shipyard scenes, there are images, maybe a simplified one with a cam, so it's an offset circle that you just tighten. Lashings, a lot of guys. And here's the boat about halfway planked up. And very commonly, you don't usually worry about the run of the plank lines for the bottom part of the boat. It's underwater. You do care about what the topside planks look like. Number one, you want them to be nice and pleasing looking, but you also want to get to the top at a reasonable width planks. So we lined off, it's called, these planks with these little battens. So each one represents a plank width. So we're just moving up the side of the boat. Working on the inside at the same time. This is a big shear clamp, oak. Had to steam the ends. This is probably 4 inches thick. So the very ends, we had to resaw a saw curve into it. So it's basically 2 pieces of 2-inch thick oak. So part of this end has got a saw curve in it. Put it in the steam box, shove it into place, try to hit all your marks, and then bolt it together. That's what all the deck beams are going to sit on eventually. And now it's winter again. And here we are fitting deck beams. Long suffering day Wheelock. It's spring, hooray. So there's a corresponding wale, they call them, on the outside that stiffens it, so you have the shear clamp on the inside that the deck beams are sitting on, and you have the wale on the outside, so it makes a giant, very rigid, very strong beam at the top of the boat. And then all these deck beams are tie the boat together side to side. While that was going on outside, we were also had to make all the rigging, all the sails. I think we had finished, I'm not sure if we had finished the suit. We were making a suit of sails for the Mayflower at the same time. Were you involved with that, Tom?
No, I came on in '97.
You can picture Mayflower and all the sails. I can't remember the statistics for it. It was a bazillion yards of sewing. All hand sewn, all linen that we imported from England, narrow panel linen. This is relatively light for the Elizabeth Tilley, the name of the Shallop. But the Mayflower had heavy canvas. But the point is, we had to soak it all in this bath to pre-shrink it. Imagine cloth off a roll, sew your sail, it rains. It suddenly shrinks up to the wrong size. So this is all pre-shrunk. Paula, who was a food waste historian, referred to this as the lasagna noodle phase. It was wicked messy. And also you have to let it dry under a certain amount of tension, otherwise it gets all wonky. So that's what's going on there. And literally everything was hand sewn. These are grommets sewn into each sail. This bolt rope that goes around the edge of the sail, hand stitched on. This is John Reeves, passed away recently. And Don Severy, long time volunteer with Mayflower and the John Howland Society. Helped a great deal on the rigging. And there's the boat in all her glory. Now, this is at Plymouth Plantation. You're probably familiar with where that is. It's not near the ocean. So we hired a boat mover to come get it. The access is a driveway that's 90 degrees to this. So, and the driver could not, it's a big trailer, couldn't make the trailer turn 90 degrees like that. So we had to literally lock this boat. Here you can see this giant lever, and everybody's on stands, holding the stand so that we can pry up the boat, move it, pry up the boat and move it, move the stands at the same time so we can get it in line So the trailer can come pick it up. That was like a half a day's worth of.
Brett is a strapping lad.
Yeah, well, yes, and you know he knows how to use a lever, so he's a timber framer. And here is Sims. I don't know if anybody knows Sims. They're, I think they're out of Situate, boat movers, and he's got it on the trailer. And launch day was a wonderful day. A lot of people came, and we were very happy. The boat floated. It actually did not take on a lot of water. We, you know, between each board is caulking. We used oakum underwater. That's hemp yarn soaked in tar, driven in. I don't have any pictures of that. Driven into each one of the seams, all by hand. And there's the happy building crew. This is that launch day. Any wooden boat needs to swell up tight before you do anything to it, so I think it stayed there a little while, maybe a week. And this is the first sea trial. Stepped the mast, made all the rigging, rigged the boat, and that's the sea trial day, which is very pleasant. Now, I don't know what time it is. Pretty good. The whole point of this exercise was to build a shallop and sail it to Augusta, Maine, up the Kennebec River with the John Howland Society. And actually, Judy, you might know. I can't remember. Do you know who this guy is?
No.
I can't remember his name. That's Jonathan Stubbs. You might recognize him. He was president for a while, treasurer, long-time treasurer.
He was a long-time treasurer and then president for a short while after
Yep.
Brad died.
For the Pilgrim John Howland Society. This is my younger brother, I guess. So, and a lot of these people had really no sailing experience. So that it was learn how to rig the boat, learn how to sail the boat. Let's do another one. A lot of unique 17th century style rigging. So we sailed from Plymouth, Massachusetts to Augusta, Maine in 10 days. And we stopped in Cohasset. I looked it up this afternoon so I would remember. Cohasset, Rockport, Isle of Shoals, Kennebunkport, Portland, Maine, Popham Beach at the mouth of the Kennebec, and then stopped in Bath, Richmond, and Augusta. It was a great trip, and I think, yeah, here's our secret weapon. Tom, you know that boat?
The wavelength.
That's the wavelength. We chartered a local guy, a friend of mine, lobsterman, charter fisherman. There's no way we could have, and I meant to say, one of the things that made the trip great was every night we stopped somewhere that the Howland organization had connections. So every night we had a party. It was wonderful. We had a turkey dinner in Rockport. We had a great time in Isle of Shoals. Kennebunkport, it was a fancy yacht club kind of a thing. Everywhere we went, it was very well received. The boat was, we had a great time. But we needed our wavelength to make sure that we kept our schedule. Every day we sailed as long as we could until we kept calculating the time. From here, we have to get into Rockport at X time. So then we'd say, hey, wavelength, get over here. And he would tell us the rest of the way.
Did she have leeboards?
Yes, she does. Maybe we'll see it in another picture, but there are leadboards, yep. This is, I think, in Bath, at the dock there. That's Richmond, I know that. And then, oh no, this is Bath, I think. Anyway, yeah, so I recognize that boat.
What year did you sail to Augusta?
I want to say 2003 was the year we went. And as I said, everywhere we went, it's a unique boat, and had a lot of attention. I think there's a couple more maybe. Yeah, just a lot of times we were being towed, I believe, yeah, because the yard is down at this point. A lot of conversations, a lot of time to talk, get to know each other. Fair weather days, this is nice. This is up at Bath, on the way north of Bath. Sailing was great. I think there's another one. On not so nice days, people were down below in lower deck trying to stay out of the weather. Now, this is the Kennebec River just north of Bath. It's beautiful. I used to live in Bath, Maine, and had never been on the river north of Bath, but it's beautiful up there. There are bald eagles that come back. There's sturgeon in the river again. It's really pretty. Here we are sailing. They call it wing and wing. Mainsail on one side, jib on the other side, sailing up the river. Every day, we could have gone further every day, but we sailed with the current as they did in the 17th century. The Kennebec is a tidal river up to Augusta. So we sailed with the current, stopped when it stopped, sailed with the current the next day. It was a great, great trip. Here we are arriving in Augusta.
What you gonna do with those lee boards?
Well, the lee boards are big boards that hang down on either side of the boat. When the boat heels over, the lee side, that one goes down vertical, and it helps keep you from sliding sideways, generally. It's not like a centerboard would in a more modern boat. They don't, it doesn't sail well into the wind, you know.
Not built for speed.
It's not built for speed, and if the wind's, you have to want to go where the wind's going. And if you want to go there and the wind's coming from there, just wait. Here we are arriving. I think there's just one more. Yes, yay. We flew across St. George on our trip. Questions?
How much water did the hull draw, and did you use granite ballast?
You know, the boat draws about 2.5 feet. It's a very shallow draft, which is an attraction for those boats. And it's incredibly stable. There's no ballast at all in the boat. As I said, it's very flat floored. And you can get it to heel over, but once you get to the bilge in the water, that's it. It doesn't go any